Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our fourth and final class meeting for the month. Really great to see everyone here, and I do appreciate you making time this evening to join me. How's everybody doing tonight? Great, that's very enthusiastic, Brandon. Good to hear it. All right, I know a lot of you who are on campus have been really busy with the Hall of Fame activities, so that's starting to wind down and maybe give you a little more of a breather. Class here is starting to wind down as well. As far as announcements go, again, we are getting close to the end. You're probably used to this format now that week 4 is usually reflection and review, but also a time when you start to bring all the elements together and see how it kind of all synthesizes into one big whole. So that's like a complete hole, not a hole in the ground. And so that's where we're at right now. I have wrapped up the week 2 mood board projects, and I'm about halfway through the week 3 mood board projects. So looking at your typefaces, and overall, really good choices so far. There's a few places where I can see some concerns about the choice of body text typefaces being potentially problematic in terms of staying legible if you have larger amounts of text. So just be mindful of that as a blanket rule, not targeted to anybody in particular, but the idea is that you want to keep your information very readable. Other announcements, I will probably wrap up the Photoshop grading tomorrow, so look for that really soon. Be sure to take a look at the professionalism activity because there is a reflection video associated with that will need to be completed, but there is no exploration for this week as we are starting to tie things up and finish the course. And other than that, there is only the final project left to do, and that's going to be what I'm really going to talk about tonight. It should be a little bit shorter session than what we have had. But before I get into that, are there any questions? And if you have questions about the final project, you might want to hold off on those for now because I'm going to get into that in detail. But are there any other questions or concerns that I could help clear up right now? All right, if everything's going pretty well, then I can dive into this this last project that we're looking at. So you've been working on your mood board projects, and the mood board is really a way of setting your artistic direction. So this is sort of, you're taking the role of a creative director and coming up with the overall style and artistic direction for this project. This is something that you might do in a web design project or any kind of visual design project in the future. If you're in a position where you're calling the shots, or even just part of the team that's allowed to get some creative input. So that's really how I've been approaching this. And in some cases, I've given some feedback where I say, go ahead and give more feedback. Imagine that you're talking to a team member that that needs to know your creative vision in detail. Don't leave any gray areas. So now we're talking about the design draft, and I call this a design draft rather than the final design, because this kind of connects to that approach that we are looking at this as a way of setting the creative direction. If you are helping guide a team that consists of artists, graphic artists, or videographers, or whatever kind of professionals might be involved, depending on the nature of the media, this would be essentially your way of showing them your whole vision for that. It might not be the final draft, because we're not all graphic designers, so we can show them the idea that we have in mind, and they can turn it into something amazing, more so than we might be able to do ourselves, at least at this stage in the degree program and in our careers. So that's the way I look at that, and that's just why it's called the design draft, but it is the culmination of this project. Went over this particular example in week 1, and I'd like to revisit it just as a reminder of the direction this is all heading. When you created your image collage, I think that's often viewed as either a collection of unassociated images that speak to you, or as the final design itself. And it's really neither one of those. It's just a collection of ideas that will feed into your actual project. So let these be kind of inspiration. Let them be guides to the direction that you're taking things. You might not actually end up using one of these images, because they might all be copyrighted images, belonging to someone else, other artists, and you don't want to include that in your own work, because that's plagiarism and potentially copyright violations. You can go to sites like Morguefile and some of the Creative Commons image hosting sites, as long as you comply with their license, and you can use that. The images that you find there. Avoid just simple Google image searches, because again, that's a lot of copyrighted material. Or you can create your own images. I think, Leticia, you had asked about creating an illustration of your own original art, and that's wonderful. If you want to do that, that's great. It doesn't have to be a photograph. You created your brand images, or your brand colors, and established that as sort of your part of your brand identity. And then going along with that were your selection of typefaces. So those two factors are really setting the style and look and personality of your personal brand that you're going to pair with the imagery that you use to tell your story. And so in the end, you get something like this. And she has made use of those typefaces. The distinction between heading typefaces and a body typeface are a little bit blurred here, because the smaller text is done in that script typeface. If she was including a lot of text, I would really discourage using that one and lean in favor of the more traditional sans serif, just for readability's sake. But for small pieces of text, these will work. Notice that the brand colors are limited to only these design elements. So just the text and these extra lines and graphic elements. Those don't dictate what colors you include in your image. But I do want you to think about color in the image and how that influenced the mood. Remember, those complementary colors used in action movie posters really create a very dynamic feel, whereas more analogous colors like we have here are a little bit more calm and sedate. They can be more romantic or more kind of nostalgic, depending on how they're used. And the images, I think the pier photo, that's the basic image here, was part of her image collage, but the rest of this is composited. The feet and legs, even I think the reflected sky in the water is composited into that image. So this is what I'm going to be looking for. I'll be looking for you to make use of the factors that you have decided on so far. You're open to changing your creative direction really at any point, but if you just scrap everything you've done up to now, of course, it kind of defeats the point. But small adjustments and tweaks to your color scheme, to your typefaces and so forth, whether it's based on my feedback or your own creative direction, are okay. But I do want this to be a culmination of your idea for this this visualization of your mission statement. Any thoughts or questions so far? Okay, and you should be able to unmute, Letitia. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
So the purpose for this assignment and this project all along was as a way of demonstrating the various concepts that we've covered in class. And so this final project is meant to be, again, the culmination of that. So what I really will be looking for is a demonstration of the ideas that we've covered so far. Ideally, you would be telling a visual story, but that doesn't always play a part. Just like I said back in week 1, visual storytelling isn't always required, and maybe it's not always right for the task, but consider that to be an option, a way of engaging your audience, telling the story of your mission statement, through imagery. I would like to see you use your brand colors, but also use color, again, as a way of influencing the visual impression of your imagery. You know how to modify color within a photo now, so you're free to do that. If you can make an image more exciting and more dynamic, or even the reverse, make it a little more subtle and calm by changing the colors, then make use of those skills. Make use of your brand typeface, of course. And very importantly, and probably most often overlooked, is the concept of visual hierarchy. Make this very purposeful and deliberate. As since I'm playing the part of your audience, I'll be looking for you to give me a planned experience with this. Make sure that I'm seeing what you want me to see in this this design. You can use color and size, placement, and so forth to direct attention. And another question that I often get is, do you have to demonstrate all of the Photoshop techniques that we've covered so far? And the answer to that is no. Photoshop techniques are tools for your toolbox that you use as needed. So use whatever Photoshop techniques you need to achieve the goal that you have in mind. If you have a creative vision that requires that you combine elements from multiple photos, then use those compositing techniques. If not, sometimes simply cropping an image and creatively positioning your text will do the trick. But I do want to see some manipulation of the photo, whether it's simply a cropping to shift the focus, and adding text, or more extensive changes to the colors and composition. Very rarely does simply adding text to an image as it is achieve the goal. Sometimes it will if you find just the right image, but really consider the visual hierarchy and composition and how you can really influence that focus by editing the photo to a greater or lesser extent. All right, so I have some examples of past projects. You might recognize some of these folks if you've been in class with them before, but some that I thought did well in achieving the goals of the assignment. This is Jelena, who has made really good use of brand colors in this case. I think that's the element that really stands out to me, is that brand identity is very apparent with the kind of powder blue and white colors. She's done a composite, the photo composite. So done pretty extensive Photoshop work here, putting her portrait on top of the cityscape. And it's come up with a very simple slogan that communicates her goals, and the little media icons give a good sense of what she does without going into a lot of detail. She's not necessarily telling you, she's showing you. And even the background image has been influenced somewhat to give it that little bit of the blue cast in keeping with the color palette. Also worth noting, just one more comment on this one, is the contrast, the warm skin tones and hair against the cool background. So that's making use of that contrast to direct attention to her figure, which is something that they use in news broadcasts as well. You'll usually see a cool color background in the back of the newsroom, so that those newscasters really stand out and maintain your focus. This one has a really similar color scheme. It's a little bit more yellow involved. Similar idea as well, with the portrait composited onto a background image, and use of very symbolic icons to create an impression. I might have cautioned against using the very foggy, overcast cityscape scene, because that could create a little bit more of a gloomy impression. But in terms of the layout and the overall design, this one's pretty well done. And there's a few things about this one that stand out as noteworthy. The visual hierarchy is really good here. Size of the title text gives it prominence, then the complementary contrast of the subtitle helps that to remain a very prominent piece. In terms of the composition, I might have suggested moving the text over to this large empty space in the sky just to kind of counterbalance, and then you could have cropped this down so that it's more focused and structured, but it's pretty interesting and creative image. And I believe this was composited as well. This is an older example, and this was from a time when the assignment was a little bit different. It was not necessarily your mission statement, but more of sort of a subject or cause that you chose to focus on, so that you'll see that content's a little bit different, but the requirements were roughly the same. And this is an example where the photographic elements take a less dominant role in the overall design than in some of the other examples. But really powerful imagery. You can see that demonstration of emotion, which we talked about back in week 1. The brand colors are represented in the design elements with the contrasting cool color text against the rose backdrop. And in this case, that those design elements are the majority of the image, so that brand color does take up more space. It's not just the branded elements, like a logo or title. And just some critique here. Remember those associations and the logical arrangement of your text. This is not intended to read "Stop! You are not what they say you are." Media influence. It is the association is through the text colors. So stop media influence. You are not what they say you are. It may have been more intuitive to arrange these so that they're grouped. Stop media influence with the slogan and with the slogan separate, but the color groupings at least help in that area. But yeah, so be very mindful of that, of how your text is read. Are there any thoughts on any of these? Any questions come to mind as far as what you can or cannot do, or thoughts of your own design that you might want to run by me at this point?
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
Most of them are using the color blue. Is there a specific reason for that, or it's just a coincidence?
I would say that's probably a coincidence.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I have another question. So under their names, they have, what they do, and I didn't do that on mine. Is it mandatory to do that, or?
Not at all. No.
Okay.
It's not mandatory to give a job description or job title.
Mm-hmm.
It's really focused on your mission statement, your personal mission statement, but which may or may not be career focused. And so
Okay.
however you want to communicate that, whether it's through your imagery alone as a visual story, or more directly stating, then that's really your own creative choice, and depending upon your particular situation.
Okay.
Yeah. And this one is one of the few that actually does use just an illustration rather than a literal photo. But this is very career focused, again, like you were just saying. Does have a pretty structured visual hierarchy with the color, the blue blurb, kind of really commanding attention, and then going through ranked by size and boldness of text. I really do have a lot of cool colors in here, blues and greens, but this one takes a much more abstract creative direction. I think these were originally fireworks that have just been really stylized in Photoshop with the crowd and that teal and rose color having really great dynamic contrast. There's a lot of iconic symbols that are strewn in here that I might have recommended making a little more visible and more kind of integrating more seamlessly into the design. And I don't know what this bear sitting on the skull is doing, but I thought the art style of this was really interesting, and especially with the focus on event planning, having this really exciting event of some sort happening was kind of a fun and different direction. And this one's, again, a little bit more of an abstract, kind of surrealist looking piece of art where the colors have been really heavily manipulated to the point that it does have that just very surrealist look. Does not have a job title in this case, but it does have an identifier with his name, and just sort of a very literal statement of his kind of his values and outlook on the world. Any other thoughts on these examples or your own ideas that you have in mind? Okay, well, those were really the examples that I had prepared for you tonight. As I said, this was probably going to be a shorter session. If there's anything that I can continue to discuss or clarify right now, I'm happy to. But if the assignment in the project seems pretty straightforward, then I'd also be happy to let you go a little early this evening.
Is this our last meeting?
It is. This is our last official meeting for the course. Yes.
Oh, okay.
I will be in Friday Blend this Friday, so you will see me there in person for those who are on campus. And for anybody online or campus, if you need to discuss any of the class assignments with me, please feel free to get in touch, and we can arrange a time to make a phone call or meet otherwise virtually. Okay. But it has been great working with you guys. This month has been kind of a blur. It's gone by pretty quick, partly because of the Hall of Fame stuff, but it does just seem like it's been a short course this time around. Um, if I don't speak with you again before the end of the week, then I wish you all the best as you move ahead with the program.
Thank you, Professor Lisa. I'll see you on Friday.
Okay. Thanks again, and you guys have a great night.
Thank you, you too.